Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards. Because we are the best. And we're not wizards. No matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Have you got a drink, by the way?
Yeah.
All right. You know that you'd want my. But then again, if I didn't ask, then what would happen is we'd get halfway through and you'd be like that. I've got a cough. You know, there'd be phlegm everywhere, and you'd be like, I've got to stop for a drink. But you'd all of a sudden just go really
it's a
deep.
soda, so I don't know if it's actually going to help.
Are you going to end up like burping?
No, just sugar coats your throat.
I know, but
I had to learn all about this when I was back in high school when I was doing debate. I know dairy kills me. I cannot
really
have dairy and then speak. My throat, I'll have a hard time speaking, and then at some point halfway through the debate round, I'll just get this like tickle in my throat, and I cannot stop coughing. So I had to like stop all dairy when I was at debate tournaments.
I used to have the same thing about chocolate. I remember that when I used to do, when I was doing singing, and whenever I went to do like any of the music festival stuff, and what would happen is you would generally sing a solo, and then you would maybe do a group duet or something like that, and then there might be spaces, or if you're doing exams, and my singing teacher was like, under no circumstances whatsoever, if you're feeling kind of like a bit tired and you need a pep up of sugar, under no circumstances eat chocolate, because chocolate will just absolutely wreck your throat. And so there was always like, eat anything at all, anything else, but even have a bit of fruit, even if you've got nerves. I know it'll affect your stomach, but if you have chocolate, it'll just wreck your singing, which is kind of like a weird thing.
It must be the fat content.
Yeah, or maybe it's one of these things that human beings aren't meant to really be drinking milk by other animals. There's a debate for you. Yeah. Is it not a case of morally wrong, but is it the reason that there's so many people, that you get the party invite nowadays for, get them for the kids, and you kind of put them out and say, please, don't bring anything kind of lactose related, because little Billy's got a lactose intolerant thing going on. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, maybe the reason that we can't have milk anymore, or there's more kids having lactose intolerance, is because we're not meant to be drinking milk from basically the teat of a herbivore.
I mean, meant implies some kind of like some kind of intent behind it, right? I mean,
are you bringing semantics into it already? This is amazing.
It's a metaphysical question, really. The way you're talking, I mean, most people of Asian descent are lactose intolerant because their cultures never drank milk, right? It's just kind of an evolutionary thing that people in the West, by and large, are more tolerant of lactose, just because our ancestors way back saw a cow and went for it, I guess. I don't know. Or a goat.
I don't know how did that happen? I mean, is that kind of some kind of weird kind of thing going on?
I don't think it was weird. I mean, humans drink milk when they're infants. You see other animals and you're like, well, we can have human milk. Why not
bad
try it out?
How bad could this be, basically?
They're just trying to use all the animals.
Well, the wrong way round. I mean, if they could have took a left instead of a right, we could be drinking like dog milk.
Well, maybe someone tried it and maybe it tastes awful.
I don't know. I don't know. I
know.
don't
You
know.
think about it, eggs are weirder. That's like, why are we eating eggs?
Because they're naturally a good source of protein. I eat a lot of eggs.
So is milk.
Yeah, but I don't. but I don't. I just think it's kind of weird. I think it's probably more likely for somebody to kind of naturally be going around gathering eggs and saying, okay, well, can we, maybe eat this? This looks like a good thing to eat. But I mean, how did the first guy kind of go? Was he feeding other cows? And then he went, oh, this is accidentally tastes really, really good. And then before he knew it, he got discovered by his friends and he was like, hey, what is it? He says, give me your coffee. No, I'm not giving you my coffee. No, give me your coffee. And he just leave my coffee alone. No, give me your coffee. So he takes his coffee and he reaches behind him and he goes, what are you doing with the cow pail? Don't do that. Don't do that. What are you? Oh. And then he hands in it and he goes, drink that. I'm not drinking that. Come on. That's coming out of cows. That's cow juice. I'm not drinking that. Drink it. Try your coffee. And he takes a sip and the next thing you know, so maybe the first kind of thing was all to do with, it was maybe a latte that started out the whole kind of milk evolutionally. There's probably a really good scientific explanation and a decent story for it, but I have no idea what's kind of going on.
That's the closest thing to a faucet they have, right? I mean, it's just kind of, it's a free beverage. It's right there.
It's just, it's like, I don't know. You can get into a whole pile of different things. So I just don't understand why now, right? Have we evolved cows so much that in order to create milk, through breeding, specific breeding, in some cases through hormone injections and stuff like that, if, that human beings just basically, we can't have the type of milk that is available now, and kids just can't deal with it because their stomach just can't, cope with all that additional super inbred lactose type thing.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
Have you tried it's beyond my expertise. I'm obviously just winging it. Have you tried oat milk then?
Oat milk?
Have you tried oat milk or anything like that? Yeah, oat milk. Milk made out of oats. Or milk made out of nuts.
Heard of almond milk.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Have you tried that?
I think I've had almond milk once. It was not good. I did not enjoy it.
It's okay. Do you know what's really nice?
I think it's just bad advertising. It's not related to milk in any ways. It's just pulverized almonds.
Yeah, but in order to get people kind of drinking it, they've got to kind of put it along as it's some kind of like substitute, isn't it? I mean, if they just say, "Hey, would you like to buy juiced almonds?" Folk are going to go, "I'm not buying your juiced almonds." It's this is nonsense. However, if they say it's like Alpro, it's like, Alpro is like, this is like this lovely almond milk that you can go and go, milk, I guess. But if you put that stuff in coffee, it doesn't kind of do the lightening thing because it doesn't have the actual same kind of cream fat content. So all you do is you get kind of coffee, which is a lighter colour because it's kind of got milk type stuff in it, but it doesn't really make it kind of the creamy stuff. So you're still missing the fat because almond milk doesn't have the fat in it. So there we go. Oat milk is good on cereal.
I'm glad. I'm glad I'm not lactose intolerant.
I don't know. I don't know. I just the other thing. I have no idea. Anyway, so that was a thoughtful process, and welcome to We're Not Wizards. And if you've been listening along, you've been going, have I tuned into the wrong podcast? And no, you're just.
Let's be honest. There's no one listening by now. Like they've all gone.
They've not gone. If you know, they've definitely not gone. That thoughtful voice that you're hearing opposite me is Marc Davis from The Thoughtful Gamer, who, for whatever reason, said he'd be willing to come back on. And at the moment, I think he's one of these people who is currently questioning his life choices. But there you go. Are you well? First of all, are you traumatized?
As well as I can be. And you were afraid we wasted all the good conversation before we started recording.
It's a normal kind of thing. I reckon, one day I'm gonna, if I haven't deleted them all, I'm gonna release the green room tapes, and it's just gonna be mad conversations that happen before the podcast button kind of gets played. I was trying to I was trying to scan back to actually check kind of when you were last on the show in my Skype. This is the scary thing. And this is when I get so regretful, is I'm kind of like, it says you last chatted. It's a guilt machine. You last chatted over a year ago. And I was like, was it that long? Oh my goodness. And it's like, I'm only actually using people for content. This is where we are. I've not actually under any circumstances checked if you're well, if life is treating you okay. In fact, if we had recorded like next week, it would have been our 1 year anniversary. How about that? So there you go.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That is, So there you go. So what you been up to in the last 358 days then, Mark?
Well, playing board games, not thinking deeply about the nature of milk.
That's an important subject. You're going to be thinking about it now.
Yeah. Now it's stuck in there. It's a thought I had, and
you can't escape.
Got to live with it.
You can't escape. From it.
Yeah. I've been playing board games, writing about them. Same old thing. Bought a house with my wife. We've been trying to get that ready to move into. Apparently, contractors are not fans of communicating with other people, so that's been a thing. Mostly playing board games, having a good time.
How does it work? How does it work then? Is it like, are you talking about getting like plumbers in and plumbers in and guys like that and electricians in to kind of like get stuff fitted and sorted out and stuff like that? Yeah.
Well, we got a house. We got a house with a basement because I wanted to make it into like an office, game room kind of thing, family room.
Yeah, which is your right, absolute right as a man to do that.
And so I'm not particularly handy, so I emailed some contractors, heard back from less than half of them after 2 weeks of silence. And then it's been 2 months since then, or a month and a half. And I have a quote from an electrician, but not the contractor yet. He's only given me an estimate, and apparently is trying to arrange the electrician to come over. So that's been a month and a half of progress of me emailing them, then doing a couple follow-ups every few days. I
don't understand it. Over here, I mean, contractors, are they like guys that you say, okay, I want the following 5 jobs done, and they just go ahead and they kind of organize the different people to come in? Is that kind of how they can work? Yeah.
I mean, I assume so.
In your experience,
you finally got an electrician. He got an electrician to come over, look at it, print out a quote, and now they're trying to schedule that. But, I mean, there's a lot of waiting and silence involved. And apparently, I assume they're just, like, they have more work than they could deal with, I guess, or they just don't care that. I don't know. I've talked to other people in the area, and they've had similar problems. So, apparently, it's a thing.
It's like my direct experience at the moment, and we're in a similar situation, is that we moved into our house. We moved into our new house a year ago, and you're doing all the, the big jobs are going out of the way, and now we've decided we're going to get some work done on the house, and these trade guys are so busy. Well, they're either so busy or they're really, really unorganised. Now, understand, these guys are working all the time. They're like working weekends, they're working till late and stuff like that. But there seems to be this thing where they can't just turn around and say, I'm too busy, I can't come round and help you. My wife puts a post on Facebook and says, you do the recommendations thing. Does anyone know like a plumber, an electrician, a joiner in the area? And you get like 50 million replies saying, oh yeah, I'll come round and check it out. And it's just like we heard from about like 3 out of the 10 people who said they were going to come round, and then we arranged them to come round, and out of the 3 people that came round, 1 guy turned up. And it's like,
yeah, that sounds about right.
And then it's like, okay, and it's like, we're giving you the job, and it's like, oh, that sounds really good, and it's not because we've kind of gone out and been financially savvy and got like 3 quotes or something like that. We've given him the job because he's the only guy that turned up. Just, it's like it's either you or nothing, and and it's like, I don't care if you're turning up in that. In that rickety van, and you accidentally set fire to my bin on the way in, because and it doesn't bother me that you're kind of like, you're smoking crack cocaine in my kitchen. I mean, you turned up, therefore you're kind of getting the job. So here we go. So I wish you best of luck. I don't know.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think if it is, if I'm in the wrong job. Because it's the other thing is as well, is that they don't turn up in rickety vans. These guys are turning up in the top of the range Land Rovers with private plates and stuff like that as well.
I mean, yeah, if it's just an issue of like there's too much work to do, I'm sure prices are going up.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a good line of work. I just don't know anything about that kind of work.
I'm just the type of person when it comes to DIY, I have great vision in my head of what I could potentially achieve doing the stuff myself, but I know that I lack potentially the skills to make it happen in a way that wouldn't be a kind of an absolute disaster kind of going on. So I guess that's the kind of the way it is. But I do.
If it's something I can look up and get precisely the instructions I need,
yeah,
I'll take a stab at it. But I mean, there's nothing online precise to like my basement. I don't and require a lot of tools I don't have. I mean, yeah.
And then it's fitting lights and stuff like that. I mean, it's like it's like, oh, do you just need to turn off the electricity? And I'm like being overzealous and turning off, the entire circuit breaker switchboard thing. I'm just turning it off so the entire street is I'm going out into the street cutting off the entire kind of street from its electricity so I can go in and change this one light because I just really don't want to die of being electrocuted. I don't think that would be a good look. And then you're kind of like, how are you meant to hang a light? You're meant to have 3 hands when you hang a light. You're meant to have 2 hands to hold up the light and then a third person in to kind of screw the light in and stuff like that. And it's just like driving me up the wall. And you get an electrician in and he manages to do it with his feet. They've done it so often. They're like, they've got like prehensile toes and stuff like that. They can just like do 15 things at once and they take half the time,
Yeah.
It's just a terrible thing, which is why our expertise is all about board games and tabletop.
Whoa. Look at that segue. Yeah.
I had to bring it back, otherwise, we're kind of like 20 minutes in and we've kind of like, everybody would be, you just have somebody going, okay, time of death.
Yeah.
We're not
once you get to a certain there's a certain point when you're recording a podcast where you're like, wow, yeah, everyone stopped listening by now, and it's free. I enjoy it.
It kind of happens, and it's like it's not
true liberation.
It's not like you're in a theater and you can see actually people physically stand and get up. You don't see that, though. I do believe iTunes have this thing where they say, here's the number of minutes before people kind of checked out of your kind of episode. And I think I looked at the stats for that kind of once, and that was probably, I'm good now. I don't need those stats, and I don't need the tears that followed, to be perfectly honest. So there you go. What you been playing then? It's a rubbish segue.
This and that. No.
Just cardboard games stuff.
Yes, games. They got dice sometimes. Cards.
Are you able to play as much because you're so busy? Are you able to play as much because you've been so busy? Because you got the house stuff and things like that. Yeah.
I mean, the house stuff we set ourselves up so that we have time to take our time a bit there. Mm. But yeah, I play regularly on Thursday nights. Friends who come over, and then I've been able to get in more longer games on the weekends pretty regularly, and then occasionally here and there. But I've been able to keep up with stuff, so that's nice. Got into 18xx games recently, which has been a great adventure.
Tell me about them. I have no idea. 18xx. It doesn't mean when I'm thinking that, I'm thinking kind of like ye olde war games type thing. Am I wrong?
I mean, they're train games, stock manipulation train games. So not necessarily dealing with war, but do have kind of an older foundation. The first one was made in the early 80s, I think, by Francis Tresham, the guy who made Civilization.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So those are his two big things he's known for. But then people fell in love with the second one he made, 1830, and then have iterated on that multiple times a year, it seems. And so GMT, a publisher I follow, published their first 18xx game, and I really like their product. So I'm like, I've heard of this before. This is probably a decent time to jump into it. It was supposed to be one that's pretty easygoing for newcomers, 1846, and then finally got around to playing it and just absolutely fell in love. So they're games where you act as investors in different train companies, and so you're buying and selling stock, and then whoever has the largest percentage of the company gets to run that company's operations. But really, they're very highly interactive economic games. The closest parallel would be like a splatter game, like Food Chain Magnate, where there's not an insignificant amount of calculation, and then kind of everything is interacting with the other players. It's not like a Lacerda game where you're kind of interacting with the game systems a lot. You're very much doing everything in response to what the other people around the table are doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So because one of the things that's always that can be levied at kind of like multiplayer kind of games, especially if it's competitive games and especially if it's Euros, is a lack of kind of like player interactivity, except for like the beginning round and the end round. And apart from that, in the middle, it's like it doesn't matter if you've got 5 players around the table or 50 players around the table. There isn't going to be kind of any real effect on kind of like what people are doing.
Yeah, it's not like that at all. I mean, a lot of it depends on which particular 18xx you're playing. But some of them are just absolutely brutal. Like you're doing all kinds of these weird shenanigans just to bring down the price of a particular company or to sell off all the assets and then dump the company on someone else. Like, it's very much a different experience you'll get from other economic games. And I hesitate to call it even like a Euro game because it's so brutal and nasty, and you can be eliminated from the games, most of the games. Some of them, if someone goes bankrupt and gets eliminated, that just triggers the end of the game, and you tally the money. Man, it's just so unique. And I've discovered, and we've kind of, my friend Orion, who's on the Thoughtful Gamer podcast most of the time. Also, I've gotten really, really into it, and we found a group that plays 18xx games weekly. So we've been kind of exploring, and we've discovered that there are two kind of schools of 18xx games. They're more operational ones, which are about the geography of the game, kind of figuring out the best routes to lay down to run your trains and investing in the right companies. And then there are these more financially angled ones, which are all about really clever buying and selling stock ploys to kind of sneak ahead, buying up companies just to sell them off and then tank them. Or one thing you can do, like in 1830, one of the original ones, is buy enough shares of a company that it begins as a company, gets additional assets, buy a train into that company, sell the train to one of your other companies, and then just tank the original company and get rid of it. And there's stuff like that where you're just maneuvering money and trains and assets back and forth between your own companies. It's really clever, and there's lots of interesting things that I don't even know how to do yet with some of these more wild financial games, but I'm very slowly kind of learning the basics.
I mean, you sound like you're hooked here. I mean, this is a guy who is, if you were maybe, 15, 20 years older, and if you said to me, you're like, I've got this basement, I'm going to be building myself my own model railway kind of thing. Here we go. I'm going to be wearing a hat and blowing a whistle, and I'm going to be filling them with the electrics, and I'm going to be getting some Hornby stock in here. Then I'd be going, right, there's that middle age that's just hit. But I mean, you're sounding genuinely excited by this. I mean, and
I don't even care about trains. Like, it's not a train thing to me. It's just a really, really interesting game system.
Is it because other things are boring you? As in, are you seeing kind of like lots of games out there and going, nah, I've seen this. I've kind of played this. It's a different type of game, but I know I've played this before, and this isn't kind of anything different. Is it because it's a completely different system for you that you're saying, well, it's like I'm a new gamer again. I'm going and I'm cutting my teeth. I have no idea what I'm doing. No idea of the strategies here. I'm learning everything, and I know that I'm just at the tip of the iceberg, and oh look, there's GMT. They're gonna, there's a whole pile of stuff I can get my teeth into.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of that. I think initially I got, the games were appealing to me just because they were interesting systems, but now having played them and seen, kind of tried to do some of the deeper strategies and thought into it, I'll look back at other games that I found pretty good, in a completely different genre, and then think, man, that really isn't, it's just the same thing as I've seen before. So maybe they've changed my perspective, but I don't think getting into 18xx was a result of a changed perspective. I don't know, I still like simple games, I still like light games, and they just have to do something interesting. The thing I'm seeing mostly with, especially when I get like a review copy of a game from a first-time designer or publisher, is that they just neglect to put choices in the game. And maybe I'm more sensitive to that kind of thing because I've been playing more games like 18xx games that are very freeform and allow a lot of player agency. But yeah, just if I'm sitting there and I feel like I've never made an interesting decision or a meaningful decision in 10 or 15 minutes, it's like, what am I even doing here? Like, it's just kind of happening instead of me doing something in the game.
And in that, I mean, as I say, this sounds like you're kind of genuinely, you're back on the joy train. Because I don't know, I'm kind of going through a period at the moment where I'm being quite strict with me picking up new games, and I'm going back and I'm playing all the ones that have come through various kind of maybe Kickstarter sources, or ones that I have traded and stuff like that, and kind of got, and I'm really trying to not just kind of back stuff through Kickstarter or jump onto the new stuff, because there seems to be a lot of hype about things, and then it seems to die away. Oh yeah,
I mean, I've always tried to stay away from getting on the hype, because I knew it was something I could never, as a person who wants to be somewhat financially responsible, I couldn't do it. And then as a board game critic, I knew I can't keep up with all the releases. So my strategy in making The Thoughtful Gamer was never to be the first one to cover something. It was to be, hopefully, someone who covers things consistently in an interesting way, no matter how old they are. And I'll review old games. I don't really care about the age of the game when I cover it, but I've tried to stay away from that. But even still, I think kind of the hype, the marketing has gotten really good to where you can get sucked into thinking that every game is going to be something new and interesting and innovative, when in fact, you get a couple of those a year that are generally or that are genuinely really, really interesting and new. And that can come from Kickstarter. I mean, I think Gloomhaven's a masterpiece, but I don't necessarily think that we'll see something that advances on that for a few years, perhaps, even though games are going to be trying to sell that.
I think there'll be a lot of games that'll be like
good. Yeah,
there'll be a lot of games that people are going to say it's a Gloomhaven copy, or it takes this element of Gloomhaven. And if then you're reading a critique of your game and it's continually going ahead and mentioning a game again and again, you're like, does this... I don't want you keeping mentioning the game that yes, I know it's similar to, but I don't want you keeping mentioning Gloomhaven, because then it looks like I'm just copying Gloomhaven, and I don't want to kind of get into that. I don't know. I kind of got this. As I say, I've been trying to go through kind of older games that have come from Kickstarter. So I got Kami-sama to the table. Last week I got Dynogenics to the table. And I played it around with it on the solo mode, but I'd never managed to get it to the table because, to be honest, the rule book isn't the best in the world. It's a bit jiggly, it's a bit kind of all over the place. There's a couple of bits of ambiguity in how certain things kind of work. And so I was kind of put off from putting it to the table. I got it to the table and I played it a couple of times. I really, really like it. It's really, really great. And I'm kicking my own ass, though other people are feel free to kick my ass if they want to. There's a backer tier on Patreon. You can come up and kick my ass. That's not true. But it might be a good idea. But anyway, I'm kind of in that thing of, I was going, damn, I could have been playing this kind of like 6 months ago. Is that kind of, I need to now look back at my collection and make sure that I'm getting the kind of the full value. And what it's meant is, it's encouraged me to take the foot off the gas in terms of picking up the kind of the games that everybody's kind of talking about. And we don't get kind of like review copies. We sometimes get like preview copies, but they're generally kind of prototype Kickstarter stuff, so it's not like the final version. It's not like, so we don't get a lot of kind of like brand new kind of shiny games as well. So, I mean, it's something I'm looking at, and we have got a writer on board who is now going to be doing a lot more writing, and we're going to be seeing a lot more kind of, I guess, kind of review articles from us, but it kind of put me in the mindset I need to start going back and enjoying what I've got and not collecting what I think I need. If you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
You know,
and there seems to be also at least a little bit of publishers realizing that they can't kind of keep up with the churn of trying to get every new release out that they have. You know, get dozens of releases a year and then hype them all up. I know. I think it was the president of AEG put out a statement fairly recently where he's like, "We're just going to cut down on the number of games that we release each year, but we're going to try to support them better." And I think publishers would be wise to, well, maybe not. I mean, from a business perspective, maybe not all publishers would be wise to do that kind of thing, but I certainly like to see that kind of thing where maybe they're releasing 6 games a year, one every 2 months, but they're supporting them really well and they're making sure that they maintain visibility. Because I mean, it's just too many games to cover. It's too many games to keep up with, and once you get stuck in trying to keep up with it, it just becomes a collecting hobby rather than a game playing hobby.
Yeah, no, and your coverage kind of suffers from it as well, because you can't. I think it's really, really difficult for you to step back and say, I'm not covering this and going out and buying this in order to kind of, or get or join the queue and try and get this game kind of sent to me so that you can get something out pretty quickly. I'm considering kind of writing something about kind of like Dinogenics. I want to do that. I want to write something which is away from, I guess, the kind of the Kickstarter and marketing hype of that time. I'd like to do something like, I'd like to get, what was I talking about? I was speaking with Mike Delisio from Sporadically Bored today about Wildlands, which is Osprey Games, and it's kind of like, it's kind of, somebody says, well, it's a very, very kind of entry-level type of skirmish game. And this is the other thing, and maybe I want something to play where there's a little bit of bite to it, but it's relatively easy to kind of get in and pick up and play. And one of the things I loved about Dinogenics was that flow, and I talked about it quite recently on another episode than that, but something like Wildlands, it's not new, it's been out for a little while. I'd like to do that. I'd like to maybe pick up a copy of Wingspan and look at it from the perspective of, this is long after the event, and how does it actually play and compare to stuff like that as well. It's kind of strange, but there is I don't know, because there are genuinely good games that deserve all the hype. You know, because you did, you covered Tiny Towns recently, and and I'll be honest, for a while, all I seen across a lot of the guys that were doing the podcasts and coverage and stuff like that, a lot of people were talking about Tiny Towns, and Tiny Towns to me looks like it looks really, really fun. It does look really, really fun.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm like, is this because there's a lot of people all caught up on it, and because it's new and exciting, and people are kind of getting bowled along and saying it's kind of really nice and exciting? But I mean, how have you found Tiny Towns? Probably on the shelf, but what did you think of it?
I think it's actually really good. I think it's one of the better, what I would call family weight. So, like, kids can play it pretty easily, although it's not necessarily directed at kids in any way. But that kind of weight, along the lines of Ticket to Ride or Carcassonne, it's one of the best of that style of game I've played. It's really, really, really fun. And I think it's a first-time designer. Like, I did an interview with him. Like, he just kind of came across this concept, wrote it down, and then got it. 6 months later had a publishing deal. It was actually kind of a really interesting kind of, just, he had a good idea and then pursued it kind of thing to publish his first game.
Because it's just kind of I don't know, it's kind of my bag with kind of, it looks like it's got really, really kind of relatively quite easy kind of mechanics to kind of pick up. And then you play it, and then you play it and you have fun and you can kind of bring anybody kind of in. And I'm kind of looking at those types of games as my son gets older, because my son, he's getting to that age where beforehand it was like I was taking a game and I was stripping down the rules and saying, okay, you just move 3 spaces and then you do that. And now I'm thinking, something like Tiny Towns or King of New York and Small World and all those things are going to become kind of more accessible. And Tiny Towns seems like it's potentially going to fall within that kind of paddock. But I mean, in your experience, is it kind of like that? Is this the kind of, it's more complicated than what you would call a gateway game, but it's complicated, but it's complicated enough to keep kind of people who have a small collection or a large collection, it's going to keep them kind of interested in it.
I think so. I mean, I think, and I'm typically a heavy gamer. Those are the games that I think are more interesting generally, although there are certainly a lot of light games that I enjoy. This one stands out to me as something really nice and really good because the concept is easy to understand. It's fun just to build things, and that's kind of true of all Euro games, but in this one it's easy to kind of express your strategic creativity and see it in front of you on the board. And I think it allows a good amount of strategy and more in-depth strategic decision making if you want to do that, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then something else I pointed out in my review is that it taps into that like high score gaining instinct, where in a lot of games, if you ever had the experience where you're teaching a game and then like you've explained, the goal is to get the most points and here's how you get points, or maybe you're being taught a game and you sit there and think, I have no clue what a good score is in this. Like, I have no clue what my end point is going to look like or what a completed game looks like. In Tiny Towns, you know what it's going to look like. There's buildings all over your board, and each building is going to give you between, 2 and 5 points generally. More if you plan things out well. So, you can see the end point of the game from the very beginning, and then it's just a matter of trying to find the best way to pilot yourself into a good position there. So I think it does a lot of things in a really nice, subtle way.
Yeah, it's like when you're playing Terraforming Mars, or I think it's Lords of Waterdeep, or any game where, there's a whole track of numbers all the way around the board, and you're just like, if this person's on 70, am I going to ever kind of catch up with them? And, you're right. I mean, it's really, really difficult to say, I know I can score kind of 30 points here, but is that crap? Kind of thing. You have no idea that somebody's going to come in behind you and go. Yeah.
It's small enough where you can kind of see it. You can kind of see the end point. And I don't think it's a perfect game, but I think it's fun. I think it does, with the kind of laying, geographical spatial laying down stuff and pursuing different strategies. I think it does what King Domino was trying to do, but in a more interesting way. Where King Domino is trying to be a nice entry point game. Yeah. You're drafting pieces, you're trying to lay them down wisely. Tiny Towns does that, and I think in a better way, because King Domino, you could really, there's a lot of uncertainty about what tiles are going to come up or what's going to be available later on in the game. And Tiny Towns, it's all right in front of you. And so for people who want to think about it more deeply, you get a bit of a random setup in what buildings are available. It has that kind of Dominion thing, where if all the players are really into it, you can sit there and kind of stare at the setup for a couple minutes and try to each formulate a strategy based on what the random setup gave you. So I've been really enjoying it. It's been great.
Is it quite easy to kind of get a good sense of the game within a couple of plays. Because this is the other thing.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people kind of like getting maybe a game 2 or 3 times to the table, and it's like they don't realise the kind of the depths of the game unless you're getting into the game kind of 7th or 8th. It means it's fairly easy to kind of to start to kind of strategize, or you're going to have to play it kind of multiple times.
I mean, there's like no intermediary steps really. It's not like a game where you do an action to set up a building, which will later on gather you some resources in order to buy later buildings, and then eventually you get to the part where you're buying like victory point things. It's literally all the buildings just give you victory points in different ways, and some of them work together really well, or some of them require other buildings. So you can say, okay, if I build this, I get 2 victory points, or I get 1 victory point, but if I build a second one, it's worth 3 victory points, and so on. These are great, and they give me like 3 points each, but they need to be arranged in a very particular way to do that. So there's no like resource gathering intermediary. It's just someone calls a resource, and then everyone plays that resource. And then you're just trying to build buildings that will give you points. So it's really easy to pick up.
I'm really... you're tempting me, sir, which is the worst thing. Because I want to find flaws in these things. I kind of look down and I want to find a reason kind of not to consider stuff. And nowadays there's a lot of brilliance coming out, but as I say, I don't want reviews for things that have been, here's the latest stuff. I want, something that's maybe been sitting on a shelf for a couple of months, and then somebody comes up and says, okay, this is what I think now that the hype has kind of died down a bit. But then at the same time, you still read over things like this and you're like going, this is so colourful and pretty. And it just...
I really, really, in my reviews, try to take the perspective of, is this game going to like last? Is it going to hold my attention for a long time? And I think, for that kind of game, it's about as good as you can get. In terms of, it's similar to Carcassonne in that way, right? Like, Carcassonne's easy to teach, and you can play it on this kind of basic level where, this, if I play here, it gives me 2 points, which is better than the other place, which gives me 1 point right now. But you can also get really into it and start memorizing the tiles and do complicated blocking maneuvers with the farms or whatever. Tiny Towns has a bit of that where, it's easy to figure out how to get some points, but if you really want to put some more thought into it, you can do stuff like trying to predict what other people are trying to build and block their resources in certain ways. There's more interaction there. The main criticism I have for it, I don't think it's a perfect game. The main thing is that there's an issue where, because the game is such that you go around in a circle calling a resource. So someone's like, okay, we're building brick, and everyone has to place a brick cube on their board. A problem that arises is that everyone will start copying each other, because you'll see, these 2 resources only go to this one building. Clearly, the first 2 people have the same idea. They're trying to build this building. And if you don't follow along with that, you're often at a disadvantage because you lose tempo trying to go away from what other people have called. So in some games, there's this weird situation where everyone has built like the exact same first 3 buildings, and no one wants to break away from this. It saves that from being a big issue because everyone has a secret building, a monument that they only have access to, which are often very, very lucrative. But you can get into weird situations where you don't want to break away from like the game zeitgeist because you're just going to lose points on it. But it gets really dull if everyone's doing the exact same thing.
You're not doing anything at all to persuade me not to kind of, but you're just making this worse now, Mark. I think we need to move away. I do. So, yeah, I mean, I guess what we're saying is if you're in any doubt about what you should do with Tiny Towns, that you should go and read this review. Were you hungry when you wrote this review by any chance?
Was I hungry?
Yeah, because it's just like you're mentioning kind of like, plates of nachos and crunches and stuff like that. Was it, were you kind of secretly, I might have been going, I need to kind of get this out of the way and then I can go and get myself a snack.
I don't remember, but I always try to include something in my reviews that an editor would remove, and I was very proud of that analogy.
I kind of, because I edit my own stuff and it's my own fault, I should actually get somebody to edit my stuff because I write how I talk, which is like...
Oh, I do exactly the same thing.
It's like my keyboard ends up being covered in phlegm by the time I've kind of like written. And sometimes I'll read stuff back and I'll just go, what were you even thinking about? This is just this is just, what are you trying to be clever here? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you aim to get a line in to a review? Do you come up, are you like me that you come up with a really clever line and then realise you're going to have to write like another 500 words around that line in order to make it work? Or is that just me being an idiot?
I haven't quite had that issue yet. I don't know. I always try to... My only experience writing when I've actually had an editor has been fairly negative, so I always try to include something that's just stupid. Like, I'll invent a word, or that analogies like that, or a stupid alliteration. I'll throw in like a string of alliterations in there for no reason. Mm-hmm. Just to... Mm-hmm. I don't want to be dull.
It's just the whole hunger thing. Tiny Towns is fun because it taps into that snack size. Personal opinion, I'm really hungry, I'd like a biscuit or a cookie, please. So it just kind of made me think that potentially, you were maybe...
I might have been really hungry. I don't remember.
Just like that. And now I'm off to the fridge. Review copy provided by Pizza Hut. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean...
Oh man, I wish I got sent pizzas to review. I'm in the wrong gig here.
Could you actually get a job? Could you imagine that? But then you would get sick of pizzas though.
I don't know.
And then what would happen if you'd end up with a one that's like, you'd end up with some weird one which is like, and the cheese on this one is made out of dog milk.
Oh gosh, no.
And that's just kind of bringing it kind of back, kind of full circle. Are you going to start doing more 18XX games then? Are you going to turn into kind of like the GMT kind of fan club then? Is this where you're going with things?
I don't know. I plan to review 1846 because that's the one I've played the most. Mm. But once that'll kind of, I think that will kind of work as a review of 18XX as a system. Mm. For other 18XX games, I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll do something semi-regular where I kind of do mini reviews of different 18XXs I've played, but there's so many similarities between them that I don't know if I could do a full feature on each different one. That'd be difficult.
I'm going to stop you there, Mark, and say you sit on a throne of lies, and there's definitely going to be... You're definitely going to cover an awful lot more. I'll tell you what, I'll eat this hat that you cannot see on camera, but there's definitely a hat here. If you just write one 18XX kind of playthrough and review, I can see you going back and doing 18XX, a retrospective. Let's start from the beginning and play them all forward. Because all happen is like GMT will hear you and their little ears will prick up, and the next thing you know, you'll get a nice email saying, go and send us your mailing address. And then you'll say, but I've got a basement. And it's like, okay, we can fill it. and you'll be up to your eyes.
There's the dream. I did pre-order their next one because I was playing. I actually got to play. Well, I got to play it because they're reprinting ones that have already been made so far. At least they haven't done any original ones. So I got to play.
So lying to yourself right now.
I got to play 1862. We actually played it back to back. We played it twice in a row because it was so weird and interesting. And then in the middle of the second play, I'm like, well, I'm just going to pre-order it. It's no use. I can't resist this one. 1862 is really weird. Like, it gets crazy. There are 3 different types of trains, and the map's super claustrophobic, and yeah. Okay, maybe I'll do a review of 46 and 62, and then from then on, I'll do the mini reviews.
I can stop anytime I want. You'll be having this conversation in another year, and you're going to you're going to be on camera, and all it's going to be is like, you're going to be wearing a GMT t-shirt, it's going to have a little slogan on it. You can have one of those hats. And then you're going to be, I've just got to turn this music off, just give me a second, and it'll be Casey Jones right into the cabin. That'll be it, we lost you. You'll have to go into some kind of 18XX recovery. You'll have,
remember how I was.
This is it. So if people want to remember you for what you are just now, before you obviously tumble down into this, your devastating life to be around train stock, where can we find you on the internet webs?
So everything I do is put on thethoughtfulgamer.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then social media, I'm on Twitter and Facebook. Probably more time on Twitter than Facebook. But if you just look up The Thoughtful Gamer, you'll find me.
And what I'll do is I'll make sure, as normal, we'll put these. But the other thing to do is, I'm just going to say that Marc's work is very, very good, and you can support him. Obviously, support him by reading his work. Make sure you listen to the podcast that he does. You can also support him on Patreon as well. He's not going to tell you to support him on Patreon, but I'm going to tell you is if there's a choice between buying like a quart of oat milk and sticking some money towards Marc's Patreon, I know where I'm putting my money. I'm just saying.
I'm not. Thank you. I appreciate that. I am not one to. I feel weird self-promoting, but I can probably guarantee that my stuff is better than oat milk.
Well, I don't know. Oat milk on cereal is pretty good. But even if you can't be bothered,
it's like chicken and eggs. You're just putting more oats on oats. It's like self-cannibalizing food.
It's just, it's better than having cow milk anyway. Or the other thing is, if you want to actually be involved in a bit of kind of a milky goodness, you can also buy Marc a coffee as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good coffee.
Yeah, there you go. See, clever. Linking all the time.
This is a better self-promotion thing than I've ever done on my own podcast.
Well, it couldn't be any worse than the opening that we did.
We did set the bar low.
Well, I think we're only destining ourselves to fail. It's like giving a porcupine child a set of balloons to play with.
Sure.
It was only going to end up one way. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, and if you've listened until the end of this, bless you, you lovely, lovely person.
I applaud you.
We both applaud you, and we will send you non-milk milk to an address of your choice. You can find us on the various places, Worn Out Faces, Worn Out Places, on Twitter at We're Not Wizards, Facebook at We're Not Wizards. I have no idea why I brought that in. I must have been listening to that or watching Donnie Darko. Do you know what it was?
Yeah.
I was watching Jake Gyllenhaal on doing his Spider-Man thing, and then it reminded me of Donnie Darko, which reminded me of the soundtrack to that film, which is glorious in its way. In
that's a really good movie.
It's a really good movie.
It was really hyped back when it came out, and then I think everyone kind of forgot about it. But I saw it after the fact, and it's really good.
I remember walking into shops and just seeing rows and rows and rows of Donnie Darko on DVD because you couldn't get it for love nor money. And then everybody bought tons of stock in and then had to sell it at a discounted price because they had to order stuff. But you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and you've got our website and we've got our email address. And if you want to email us about anything magical, you can email us at magic@wearenotwizards.com. And if you want to email us about the podcast, you can email us about podcast@wearenotwizards.com. If you like what you've listened to, consider going to the various podcast catchers out there that either use the word pod or the word cast in them. Except Spotify, which uses neither, because it likes to be difficult. Or you can... Don't.
I mean, iTunes technically doesn't
well, it's not called iTunes, is it? It's called Apple Podcasts, smart Alec.
Oh, is it? I don't use any Apple stuff.
Just try to lead into the Apple stuff. You're just blocking me off. Try to do the entry so you can go home. So you can get back to your basement. Phoning up people that won't come round. Playing your train games. But if you do like us, there's a couple of things you can do. Obviously, Mark's not going to like us. He's not going to come back again. But you can go to Apple Pod. You can tell people about us. Because, we need to be... We're kind of like chicken pox kind of thing. And we're hoping there's anti-vaxxers out there. But that doesn't work because, or you could go to Apple Podcast and you can drop us a subscription or a rating or a review. If probably better not giving us a rating or a review this week, because that wouldn't be a good thing. I think it's going to turn out quite bad for us.
Find a different episode.
The other thing you can do is, so do that. I don't know. Tell somebody. I have no idea. Help, help, help. There's a fire. But there's only two more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Mark?
I mean, you couldn't even say it without laughing.
I know. But it's not about me, it's about you. So you're a wizard.
Am I? I'm not a wizard.
Of course you're not. You're a train driver. And the other thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic, the rather wondering why he came on and expected to speak board games, which he talked for board games for 5 minutes, so he should be happy, but it'll probably take him about another year to get over this experience, but hopefully he'll forget about it, is the rather wonderful Marc Davis.
Goodbye. See you in a year.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful.fireside.fm, and until the next time, toot toot, or goodbye.
Oh man.
Okay, that'll do. That was a train wreck.
Oh, I love it.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.